students, today we will be discussing Kautilya's Arthashastra, the text and its contents. The objective for today's discussion is to give you an understanding of the comprehensiveness of the text and the time of composition, an insight into the significance of Arth in politics, the relationship between politics, ethics and administration, and finally, how Arthashastra is a manual of governance and administration. For the convenience of understanding, let us divide the discussion into a number of segments. We would start with the origin of the text, then the date of composition, the authorship, meaning of Arth and the contents of the text. Coming to Kautilya's Arthashastra, it is considered to be a masterwork of India's greatest statesman, Kautilya, Chanakya or Vishnugupta as he is called. Composed in the late 4th century BCE, Arthashastra is considered to be one of the timeless classics of the ancient art of war and governance. It was lost sometimes after the fall of the Gupta dynasty, reappearing in 1904, more than 1400 years of obscurity. It was then published in 1909 and the first English translation came in 1915 by Dr. R. Shamashastri, to be followed by the German, Russian and other translations. The text and the authorship. The text has been subjected to intense debates on the date of composition and the author. The Arthashastra tradition, students, has been initiated much before Kautilya. He himself admits he was not the originator of the treatise. As per available references, there are at least 4 distinct schools and 13 individual teachers of Arthashastra tradition before Kautilya. And as is the case with many work on ancient works, Kautilya's Arthashastra is also disputed. Now, Kautilya, the author of Arthashastra. Kautilya, as I have just said, is often referred as Chanakya by his birth name, and he is also understood to be Vishnugupta or Kautilya, coming from the Kutila Gotra. In Arthashastra, there is much criticism of the opinions of other teachers, followed by Kautilya's own opinion about a particular subject. However, the preponderance among academics is that Kautilya is the author of this text, Arthashastra, and it is clearly stated in the very first chapter that this text was composed during the reign of Chandragupta Maurya between 321 and 297 BCE. In fact, there is another proof that the author was Kautilya. A verse in the 15th chapter enumerates that this science or Shastra was composed by that person who in resentment rescued the earth from the Nanda kings. Kautilya, the legend, there are so many stories about him. All sources of Indian tradition, Brahmanical, Buddhist and Jain, agree that Kautilya, also referred as Chanakya Vishnugupta, destroyed the Nanda dynasty and installed Chandragupta Maurya on the throne of Magadh. The name Kautilya denotes that he is of the Kutila Gotra. There are various legends about his life. One legend has it that he was a Keralite Brahmin, impoverished, lean and prepossessing, who had come to the court of Nanda king to display his knowledge. There is another story and legend which says that he was a North Indian Brahmin, born and educated in the famous university town of Takshila, who came to Patliputra to win laurels after displaying his philosophical prowess. Dhanananda, the great Nanda ruler to whose court Kautilya came as per stories, was a ruler who was highly miserly and base-born. The arrogant king had insulted Kautilya, who had come to Patliputra to display his knowledge, and Dhanananda had ordered Kautilya to move out of the court palace while he was having a feast. This incensed and infuriated Kautilya so much that he refused to tie his forelock knot again till he had destroyed the Nanda king, root and branch. He now moved around as an ascetic, searching for a right person, a suitable person who can help him to achieve this objective of removing the Nanda ruler. Students, these stories are not without point, because Kautilya's Arthashastra is considered to be a practical work, and it could have been written only by someone who had implemented the tactics which he prescribed. How to form alliances? How can weak kings destroy stronger ones? What are the strategies to pursue where a superior ruler can become a Chakravartin? How can a state be governed? How can welfare state principles be implemented? These are practical principles contained in the Arthashastra, and it is indicative of the fact that the author was giving real life answers to every conceivable hypothetical situation. Arthashastra. Let us come to the meaning of the term Arth. To fully comprehend the meaning of Arthashastra, we need to understand the meaning of three Sanskrit words: Arth, Shastra and Arthashastra. Arth in Sanskrit has multiple meanings. It includes material well-being, goal, meaning, money, pursuit, passion, reason, wealth, legal case, profit, self-interest, and so on and so forth. It is one of the goals of human life, students, where Arth, Dharma, Kam and Moksha. Shastra in Sanskrit means science. Precisely speaking, it means an expert tradition of knowledge. What did Kautilya mean by Arth? According to Kautilya, there were three basic meaning or connotations of Arth. First, Arth implies the subsistence of mankind, and that is wealth. Secondly, Arth also denotes the earth which contains mankind. Thirdly, Arth also denotes the science of acquiring and maintaining the earth. Thus, Arthashastra is composed as a guide to acquire wealth and power righteously. Kautilya is the first thinker to offer a systematic and balanced attempt to construct a philosophy exalting earth or wealth, and the importance of earth in the establishment of a strong empire. In fact, Kautilya, being a realist, emphasized on the need of a sound treasury. What is the significance of earth in politics? He visualized an all-Indian monarchical power, and wealth was needed for power, and he was interested in power and wealth. He explicitly opines that all enterprises and actions require economic interest for its realization. It is essential for the king to have a full treasury, otherwise he would try to devour the weak and the resources of the people. Kautilya is also of the opinion that the best treasury is one which has been accumulated virtuously and righteously. A treasury filled with gold, silver, precious gems, and which is in a position to tide over all crises. Kautilya was a realist to understand that wealth and wealth alone is important, as much as charity and desire both depend on wealth. What are the contents of the Arthashastra? Briefly speaking, students, it consists of 6,000 sutras divided into 15 books or adhikarnas. These 15 books are further divided into 150 chapters and 180 sections or prakarnas. And the text that we will be taking up was translated by Dr. R. Shama Shastri. Let us briefly move on to the chapters of the 15 books and the various titles. Book 1 is titled Concerning Discipline. Now, what does it say? It speaks about restraints in the organs of sense. It speaks about creation of ministers, creation of counselors and priests. It speaks about protection of princes. It speaks about the conduct of a prince under restraint, the duties of the king, and personal safety. Book 2, Duties of Government Superintendents, which comprises of the formation of villages, districts, construction of forts and buildings, the business of collection of revenue by the Collector General, business of keeping up accounts, detection of embezzlement of funds by government servants out of the treasury, examination of the conduct of government servants, superintendence of the treasury, examination of the gems that are to be entered in the treasury, conducting mining operations, infrastructure, duty of revenue collectors, and the duty of the city superintendent. Book 3 concerns law. It deals with administration of justice. For instance, it speaks about determination of forms of agreements. It speaks about legal disputes concerning marriage, division, inheritance, non-performance of agreements, recovery of debts concerning deposits, rules regarding slaves and laborers, rescission of purchase and sale, resumption of gifts, sale without ownership, robbery, defamation, assault, betting, gambling, and miscellaneous legal disputes. Book 4 is titled Removal of Thorns. Book 4 deals with suppression of crimes and includes sections on detection of crime, control over merchants and artisans, torture, and even capital punishment. Some of the penalties that have been provided in Book 4 comprise of penalties to protect artisans, protect merchants, remedies against national calamities, suppression of the wicked people, detection of criminal tendency among the young people, examination of sudden death of a person, trials and burdens of illicit confession, protection of all kinds of government departments, and death with or without torture. Book 5 speaks about conducts of courtiers. It speaks about awarding punishments, replenishment of the treasury, concerning subsistence to government servants, the conduct of a courtier, and consolidation of the kingdom. Book 6 speaks about the source of sovereign states. It speaks about the 7 elements of the state, or the Saptang theory. The 7 elements contained in this book are Swami, Amatya, Janpat, Durga, Kosh, Danda, and Mitra. All these 7 elements are mutually related to each other. Book 7 speaks about the end of the 6-fold foreign policy. It deals with how different foreign policies can be implemented, how an agreement can be made by an inferior ruler, when to form neutrality, when to declare a war, when to go for marching or when to sign a peace treaty, when to assemble, when to make friends, when to go for help, and what kind of treaty can bring about acquisition of land. Book 8 concerns vices and calamities. Book 8 speaks about the various calamities that might affect the prakritis or the organs. It says that as a general rule, the calamity affecting the preceding element is more serious than the one immediately following, which means that the calamity affecting the Swami is more serious than the calamity affecting the Amatya. The calamity affecting the Amatya is more serious than the calamity affecting the Janpad, and so on and so forth, and different calamities that can affect different elements have been put forth in great detail. The next book, Book 9, speaks about the work of an invader. It deals with preparations for war, types of troops, how they can be mobilized, and how expeditions can be started, and how dangers can be averted in a battlefield. It speaks about the knowledge of power. It speaks about the time. Time is of extreme importance, the strength and weaknesses of the kings, the time of invasion, the time of recruiting the army, remedies against internal and external attacks, troubles, what happens when there is loss of men and money, how to avert internal and external dangers, What sort of treatment should be given to traitors and enemies? There is also a section which speaks about doubts pertaining to wealth and harm, success to be obtained by the employment of various strategies. The next book, Book 10, is concerning about war. It speaks with different strategies for fighting. Describing the main battlefield, it speaks about the type of battle formation or arrays. It speaks about different modes of fighting. Some of the most important areas discussed in Book 10 are the forms of treacherous fights, various forms of attacks, various fights, and the organization of the infantry, cavalry, chariots. The distinctive array of troops in respect of wings, flanks, front, distinction between strong and weak troops, and how to make and prepare different battlefronts, keeping in mind the enemy and against whom the battle is to be fought. In fact, there are various battle formations which has been explained. For example, the formation like a staff, a snake, a circle, a detached order, all different formations according to the needs of time. Book 11 speaks about the conduct of corporations. It only has one chapter which describes how a conqueror should tackle oligarchies governed by a group of chiefs instead of a single king. This book also speaks about the causes of dissensions among people, among subjects, and what kind of punishments can be given. Book 12 concerns about a powerful enemy. It says that how can a king tide over a powerful enemy who is threatening the kingdom? The importance of spies and messengers, the importance of a battle of intrigue, the importance of slaying the commander-in-chief and inciting a circle of states, the importance of spies with weapons, fire and poison, the importance of destroying the supply of stores. What are the various strategies that can be taken in order to defeat a powerful invader, a powerful enemy? How are you going to capture this very strong enemy? What are the secret and covert means that can be applied in order to get complete victory even against a very strong enemy? Book 13 speaks about the strategic means to capture a fortress. It is concerned with the conquest of an enemy fort. It believes in sowing the seeds of dissension. It speaks about enticement of kings by secret means. It speaks about the works of spies. It speaks about how the operation has to be undertaken in order to siege a fort. It also speaks of how peace can be restored in a conquered country. Book 14 speaks about secret means. It describes various secret and occult practices. What are the means to injure an enemy? What are the various delusive contrivances? What secret measures you can undertake in order to cause injury to an opponent? At the same time, what are your remedies to prevent injury to your very own army men? Book 15, students, gives the plan of a treatise. It speaks about the methodology and logical techniques used in the entire treatise. It is so very interesting to note that Book 15 speaks about the objective behind writing this Shastra. It notes that the Shastra conforming to these paragraphic division is composed as a guide to acquire and secure this and the other world. In the light of this Shastra, one can not only set foot on righteousness, economical and aesthetical acts and maintain them, but also put down unrighteous, uneconomical and displeasing acts. So this is a Shastra for everyone. It can be followed by a weak king, it can be followed by a strong king. It is a compendium, a guidebook for all rulers to become strong and emerge as the Chakravartin. The Shastra also says that it has been made by a person who from intolerance quickly rescued the scriptures and the science of weapons and the earth which has passed to the Nanda king. So it speaks about the authenticity of the text, the practical application of the principles outlined in the text. Kautilya's Arthashastra is comprehensive. It is considered to be a handbook of governance. It is contemporary in orientation and style. The comprehensiveness of the text is because of two important aspects. One, its scope covers almost every aspect of governance. Almost all subjects of statecraft that a ruler can confront has been addressed in this text. The second point worth noting is the fact that the question of interconnectivity of content. Each book is connected to the other one. Each part, each strategy, each principle is connected to the other one, which provides a wholesomeness to the approach. Students, please note, any random reading of the text in isolation without juxtaposing it against the inherent values of the text will definitely be an injustice to the mastery with which the text has been written. The concepts cannot be studied in isolation. Rather, each and every concept has to be understood keeping in mind the interconnectivity and why a particular concept has been systematically organized and theorized by Kautilya. Let us sum up what we have studied about the text. We found that Arthashastra is a text of profound historical significance. We have also studied that the text was written by Kautilya, who is also known as Chanakya or Vishnugupta. It encompasses both administrative principles as well as foreign policy strategies to be pursued by a strong as well as a weak king. The text is considered to be the science of statecraft, politics and governance. The text is highly contemporary in orientation since most of the principles and theories contained in the text can be applied in the modern contemporary world. Thank you.